I found my long-lost twin on Reddit. You won't believe what happened next. It all started on an otherwise boring Friday night. Like most nights, I was mindlessly scrolling through Reddit, hopping from one thread to another. You know how it goes, getting lost in endless discussions, funny memes, and the occasional drama that Redditors love to dissect. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just killing time before bed. I ended up on a post in the r or to Daily Yarn subreddit, where someone had shared an interesting fact about twins separated at birth. The post talked about how some twins, even though separated, would often live eerily similar lives. You know, like marrying people with the same name, having similar jobs, or even naming their pets the same weird thing. I thought it was fascinating but didn't really dwell on it. But the more I thought about it, the more something gnawed at me. You see, growing up, I always had this weird feeling that I was missing something, or someone. I had no siblings, at least none that I knew of. My mom used to joke about how she only had room in her heart for one child, but there was always this strange void I couldn't explain. Anyway, as I kept scrolling through the comments on the twin post, one particular comment stood out to me. A Redditor, let's call him Jacktwin91, mentioned how he had been adopted and recently discovered through a DNA test that he might have a twin brother somewhere out there. His story was strikingly similar to mine, down to the year and place of birth. I froze. Could this be a coincidence? Was I reading too much into it? The gears in my head started turning, my palms were sweating. I clicked on his profile and started reading through his post history. In one post, he mentioned some more details about his adoption, details that mirrored my own life story. He was born in 1991 in Chicago and had been adopted by a family in a nearby suburb. That's when the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. That was my story too. I was also born in Chicago in 1991. My mom had always told me I was a miracle baby because she had me later in life, but she never gave me the full details of my birth. I never questioned it much. I loved my mom, and she was always so loving and supportive that I didn't feel like I needed to know more. But this was too much to ignore. I decided to shoot my shot. I commented on one of Jacktwin91's posts, saying something like, "Hey, I couldn't help but notice some similarities in your story to mine. I was also born in Chicago in 1991, and I've always felt like there's something more to my story. Any chance you'd want to connect?" I didn't expect much. Reddit can be pretty hit or miss with people replying, especially when you're diving into personal stuff like this. But to my surprise, I got a response just a few hours later. "Wait, are you serious? DM me." I couldn't believe it. My heart was racing as I typed out a private message to him, explaining a little more about myself, including the hospital I was born in and my adoption history, at least what little I knew of it. The more we talked, the more eerie it became. We were born on the same day, in the same hospital. His adoption story aligned almost perfectly with the little information I had about my birth. We exchanged pictures, and my jaw dropped when I saw his face for the first time. It was like looking in a mirror. He looked exactly like me, same build, same face shape, same damn smile. We could have passed as identical twins, no question. I sat there staring at his photo for what felt like hours, my mind racing in disbelief. Could this really be happening? But before I could spiral too deep into my thoughts, Jack messaged me again. "Dude, I think we're twins." I didn't know how to respond. Everything felt surreal. Could this be a scam? Was it even possible that my mom had never told me I had a twin brother? I couldn't wrap my head around it, but deep down, I knew he was right. The resemblance was too striking to ignore, and our stories aligned in ways that no scammer could fake. That's when Jack suggested we do a DNA test. He had already done one a while back through one of those ancestry websites, and he suggested I do the same so we could confirm once and for all. I agreed, and within days, I had the test ordered. The wait for the results was torture. I barely slept, barely ate. I couldn't focus at work. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was the notification saying my results were ready. During that time, Jack and I kept talking about our lives, our families, our careers. It was wild how much we had in common. We both worked in similar fields, both had an unhealthy obsession with basketball, and even our taste in music was almost identical. It was like we had been living parallel lives. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the DNA results came in. I opened the email with shaky hands, my heart pounding in my chest, and there it was, the confirmation I both dreaded and anticipated. I had a direct familial match. Jack. He wasn't just a distant cousin or some other random relative. He was my twin brother. I couldn't breathe. My heart felt like it was trying to break out of my chest. I stared at the screen, the words blurring in front of my eyes. Jack, the guy I had randomly found on Reddit, was my twin, my long-lost brother. The emotions hit me like a freight train: shock, excitement, fear, confusion, joy, sadness. Every single emotion I could feel was swirling inside me, overwhelming my senses. I immediately texted Jack, "We're twins." His reply came almost instantly. "Holy shit, I knew it." From that moment on, my life changed forever. Jack and I spent hours talking that night, both of us trying to process what this all meant. We shared everything, our childhoods, our families, our friends. He told me about his adoptive parents, how loving and supportive they had been throughout his life. I shared stories about my mom, about how she had raised me as a single parent after my dad left when I was young. It was bittersweet. On one hand, I was ecstatic to have found my twin brother. On the other hand, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of loss for all the years we had missed out on. We should have grown up together, experienced life side by side. But, instead, we were strangers for nearly 3 decades, living separate lives, unaware of each other's existence. Jack felt the same way. He told me how he had always wondered about his birth family, but he never expected to find a twin brother. It was like something out of a movie, too crazy to be real. But it was real. The next big question was, what do we do now? We both agreed that we needed to meet in person. I mean, how could we not? We were identical twins, separated at birth, and we had just found each other through Reddit. It was too insane not to meet up. Jack lived in a different state, but we decided to plan a trip to meet halfway. We set the date for a month later, giving us time to process everything and make arrangements. In the meantime, I had to have a tough conversation with my mom. I wasn't sure how she would react. Would she be angry that I had snooped into my past without her knowledge? Or would she be heartbroken that I had found out the truth? I had no idea what to expect, but I knew I couldn't keep this a secret from her. So, one evening, I sat her down and told her everything. As soon as I mentioned the DNA test, I saw her face fall. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. That's when I knew it was true. I had a twin brother, and she had kept it from me all these years. Tears welled up in her eyes as she finally spoke. I'm sorry, Ben, she whispered. I didn't know how to tell you. She explained that when I was born, she was in a very difficult situation. My biological father had left her when he found out she was pregnant, and she wasn't prepared to raise 2 babies on her own. So, with a heavy heart, she made the decision to give Jack up for adoption. It was the hardest decision she had ever made, but she thought it was for the best. She wanted him to have a better life, with parents who could give him the love and support he deserved. I was stunned. I couldn't believe she had carried this secret for so long, but as angry as I wanted to be, I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. She had done what she thought was right at the time, even if it meant keeping such a massive secret from me. In the end, I forgave her. She was my mom, and I knew she had always done her best for me. Besides, I had found Jack now, and that was all that mattered. The day I finally met Jack in person was one of the most surreal moments of my life. We decided to meet at a coffee shop in a small town halfway between our homes. I was nervous as hell, my mind racing with all sorts of questions. What if we didn't get along? What if it was awkward? What if he wasn't everything I had imagined him to be? But the moment I walked through the door and saw him sitting there, all my doubts melted away. He stood up as soon as he saw me, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. It was like looking in a mirror. He was me, but not me. The same face, the same features, but a lifetime of different experiences written in his expression. We hugged, and in that moment, it felt like everything fell into place.